I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're uncovering the secrets to effective leadership with Tracy Curington, the author of a powerful book. It is called The Toughest Challenges for Servant Leaders and Practical Ways to Solve Them. Whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro, this book is packed with practical advice on overcoming the toughest hurdles leaders face, from boosting team productivity to handling time management. Tracy shares actionable insights that every leader needs. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Books to Life Marketing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Tracy, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
It is a pleasure to be here, Mr. Crawford.
Great to have you on the show. I think this is such an empowering book, but let's start out with a little explanation for the folks at home. What do you mean by servant leaders?
Servant leadership, if you were to define it, it was actually a phrase coined by Robert Greenleaf in 1970. After about 40 years working with AT&T, he retired in 1964, and then he wrote an essay in 1970, and where he coined what we now know as servant leadership in just one sentence, and it just kind of caught on. But when I think about servant leader, I don't think it's really can be attributed to Robert Greenleaf. You'd have to go back to Jesus Christ in the Bible, where he told his disciples, "The greatest among you shall serve." And then he even modeled that by washing his disciples' feet. And so when you think about servant leadership is a model of leadership or an approach to leadership that really highlights the behavior of the leader themselves according to the welfare of those he or she leads.
Wonderful. I totally agree that you go back to Christianity and realize that Christ was giving us examples of a great leader for sure as well, in being a servant to the people. Remember, he washed the disciples' feet. You've been a servant or a leader, I should say, for quite a while, starting at 19.
Yeah.
Tell us about your adventures there.
So I came into the workforce at the age of 15, and a well-known retail store called Kmart,
Hmm?
and so the blue light specials.
Yeah.
I worked my way up, moved on to TJ Maxx, and then I went into a restaurant, food service. When I went into the food service industry, I started out just like anybody would do at my age. At 18, I started out as a dishwasher, and then but it was in about 7 weeks I'd worked my way up and worked my way out of that position into the kitchen side. They moved me at 19 years old to a brand new store that they had started, and they put me in as leadership over guys that were twice my age, were in the industry for 20 years, 25 years in the kitchen, and they put me in as the night shift supervisor for a 4-star restaurant in Cincinnati, Ohio. So that was I was kind of like that trial by fire, just thrown in there and no training at all. But I discovered something that as a 19-year-old trying to lead those that are 40, 42, 45, you can't take the stand of like, do what I say. You can't take the management approach. I believe that you manage things, you lead people. And so when I chose that route, I thought, man, I'm getting a lot. These guys loved having me as their leader because I wasn't approaching it as a management position, managing people. I was leading people. So that was my introduction to leadership. And then from that, moving forward into other arenas, ministry life as a pastor for 20 years now, and in Christian service for about 3 years in full-time Christian ministry, and then also owning my own business and leading in other areas.
I learned at a young age the difference between a boss and a leader. A leader
Mm,
gets results, a boss just gets aggravation because the workers resent him or her. Uh,
yeah.
and I think that's very, very true. And leading by example and doing the work and showing what needs to be done and demonstrating how it should be done is the best way. Mentors were very helpful to you as you
Yeah.
charted your course. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the mentors that I had especially starting out in this quick or in this restaurant that I had. I had a guy named Chris and Craig, and then my own boss was a mentor to me. And they showed me how to navigate through people challenges that I was having. And in some cases, they were my supervisors, my direct reports, but they mentored me. And then from there, I had other men or women, some people that are mentored me from afar, reading books. John Maxwell has become a mentor to me. Grant Cardone has become a mentor to me. And the power of mentoring is I believe that a mentor is one who knows the way, goes the way, and has the ability to show you the way. And so those mentors, I'm very grateful for those mentors in my life that positioned me in a place where I could lead people that were much older than I was, simply because I followed maybe their advice, their suggestions, and allowed them to speak into my life.
So important to find that person who is your superior, who sees something in you that makes you special and shows you the ropes, because so much of it is knowing the protocol of a company, understanding how things work, understanding the dynamics, who the true leaders and bosses are within the organization. And the mentors often point that out to you and make it a lot easier to climb those ropes. The name of the book, of course, is The Toughest Challenges for Servant Leaders. So tell us what two of those tough challenges are.
Well, I'll go with the first chapter and the last chapter. The first chapter is about handling conflict. And that's a tough challenge for leaders, because most of us, we don't like conflict. We'd like to avoid it, but conflict is inevitable. Where there are people, where there are processes, there's going to be conflict. Where there are priorities don't conflict until they conflict. So there's always going to be conflict. We live in a world where there's many opportunities for you to handle conflict, and that's a huge challenge. The last chapter of the book is about terminating employment, and I nearly did not put that in the book. I had 12 chapters, and then I gave a bonus section to a company that I was teaching, and they said, this one has to be in the book that you're putting out. And so I went ahead and inserted it. But terminating employment, a lot of leaders, they struggle with that. And so they have the wrong person in the organization simply because, what will his family do? If he loses his job, he's the breadwinner, and what will his family do? And so they're thinking beyond just that man. They're thinking about his family. They're thinking about, and I've got a good relationship with him. I mean, do I lose the relationship simply because he can no longer, or she can no longer work here? So those are challenges. Handling conflict was one that my father taught me, probably my favorite chapter of the book, and I lead with that one, simply because my father taught me as a young man. I love the statement he shared with me. He said, son, all wrongs need to be righted, but not all wrongs need to be righted by you. And so when you're a servant leader and you're considering handling conflict, one of the very first things that I encourage leaders to do is diagnose the challenge of the conflict itself. Is this a conflict that you yourself are supposed to be handling? As a manager, we want to go around and try to solve all the problems. And there's some problems that are not meant to be solved by you. And so that's one of the first steps, just to qualify that wrong. Is it a wrong that needs to be righted by you? And if it is, don't create more wrong trying to right that wrong.
I've found in leading people, it's important to make them feel invested in the organization, that our success is your success. What approaches do you have to make people feel that way?
So I think everything does rise and fall on leadership, and considering those people that are in the organization that we really want to value. I think everybody has worth. And there's several opportunities throughout the book, and kind of the meat in the middle of it, where you're creating space or you're navigating change. One of the biggest things when I wrote the book, when I was writing the concept for the book, we were going through year one of COVID-19. So it was 2021. And at the end of 2021, just before 2022, I discovered that 11 million people in America had left their jobs. And when they left their jobs, a lot of them had said that they left their jobs because they just didn't feel valued in the company. And so how does a leader navigate change through people that are leaving simply because they're not valued? And so I course corrected, and because I'd always heard that your greatest asset are your people. And I think about an asset, Logan, I was thinking an asset's like a computer, a tablet, a car, something like that that helps you do your business. So I changed the idea from my people are not an asset. So I instruct in my consulting business, my coaching business, I instruct leaders to consider your team members as your greatest competitive advantage. What can you do with great people? Honoring them, valuing them, seeing them, knowing little things about them. What are they doing? And so that kind of like pepper to mashed potatoes throughout all 13 chapters of the book. It's all peppered in there to where you're not going to read the book and not come away with this sense of you cannot build a great company culture on the back of a poor team culture.
Exactly. No, I think it's great to not view people as assets, but view people as people and contributing members to the team. Of course, they are great assets in one sense, but like I like the fact that you humanize people more.
Right.
It's interesting though when you were talking about that computers are assets and laptops and tablets are assets. Nowadays, so many people work remotely. What do you
Mm-hmm.
view as some of the new challenges for leaders in an age where you're not seeing Tim, Bill, Mary come into the office every day where you have a cup of coffee and chat over the water cooler and do what we used to do in the old days? Now it's
Yeah.
a brave new world where all you see is output and maybe a face at a Zoom meeting. What's your advice to leaders trying to lead in this current culture?
Yeah, I think there's so many great opportunities in leading teams remotely. But to your point, there are challenges to that. And when I talk to leaders that are maybe they have a sales team that's remote, or maybe they have virtual assistants. These are big, and they may be in the Philippines, they may be in Paraguay, they may be around the world, and they're trying to lead from the States or from the UK. And so they'll come to me like, hey, if you were to diagnose the biggest issue that you have currently going on in your company, what would it be? I think, Tracy, it's communication. And when we really go down to it, it's really not communication. It's actually the prelude to communication, and that's connectivity. So you and I, we've got a smartphone. We're on a Zoom link right now. If there was no connection, we could have no communication. And so I think the when I coach or consult, I come back to the connection piece right there. We got to connect before we can communicate. We can't move forward without communication. And if we don't have connection, we're never going to have the communication. So I think it's a matter of connecting. It doesn't have to be long, but it just has to be like that leader. I see you. I know what you're going on. It doesn't take much. I know the difference between ordinary and extraordinary leadership. It's just a little bit extra, just that little bit extra. If you're friends on social media, they're going to populate in your, on the morning of their birthday. Hey, it's so and so's birthday. It doesn't take much just to reach out and say, hey, happy birthday. I was thinking about you today. Make it a great day. It doesn't take much, but it does take that little extra effort to connect before you can communicate.
Great advice. The difference between doing good and being great often is just the nuance.
Yep.
So just that little touch extra. And I think you're right on target there. And a lot of companies also have filled the gap by having social gatherings once a year,
Mm,
twice a year,
sure.
quarterly. And I think that's a great way for people to connect, as you mentioned as well. The name of the book is Toughest Challenges for Servant Leaders and Practical Ways to Solve Them. Whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro, this book is packed with practical advice on overcoming the toughest hurdles that leaders face. It's a great read. It's an empowering read. It'll be a paradigm shift for you if you are in management right now. If you are part of the labor force, it'll help you think about how your bosses are thinking, how your leaders are thinking, and perhaps you'll approach your job in a different way and put yourself on a path to management or leadership. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan.
My pleasure. Great speaking with you. I appreciate all of your wisdom and insights. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.